are these factors present in our program? Are these factors present in our program? And if they are, which ones do we do well? Which ones we are a little elusive for us and that we're still struggling with?
Providing opportunities for restitution for young people, restoring relationships, because there are a lot of challenges and moments of conflict that we are able to allow them to come back into our program and resolve whatever conflicts there are. That simple but very powerful, that we greet young people by their names, and that we have an open door policy. Two of the challenges were high expectations and engaging activities. We did talk about strategies for high expectations, that we model high expectations, and that we relabel young people so that they are no longer, we don't look at them as criminals, but we're looking at them as young people who are trying to change their lives. And with engaging activities, we talked about how difficult that is within the constraints of a program where there are parameters and a lot of demands, but that there are ways that we can still provide engaging activities in the way that we engage, the energy that we bring, the creativity that we bring to our activities, and really meeting young people where they're at and having discussions and finding ways. Joe talked about, for example, with essays, finding ways and giving young people topics that they're actually interested in talking about. We landed at having them write about, for example, if your partner cheats on you, what are 3 things that you should not do?
Highlights, we're going to go straight to continuity. And talking about all that goes on in this very difficult job that they do, people talked about staffing changes and how through continuity they made things work. And so they had such great strategies around, for one thing, making sure young people felt heard about what was changing, what was happening. Saying that communication was key, and looking at how during case conferencing and meetings and how were teams exchanging information about what had changed and when to get the information to young people in a timely manner. Another really great thing they talked about was not necessarily making assumptions about how young people felt about the staff that moved on, right? They may have loved them, they may have hated them, but making sure that young people felt like they could say whatever it was they felt. And then talking about programming and how to look at continuity in the programs that they had. They talked about having positive reinforcement and speaking to strengths and understanding that young people have different places to deal with their different emotions. So on the site, you know, we all about painting and looking at the therapeutic value of that, knowing that you may have other issues that you're talking to your case manager about. You know that I'm here, I'm consistent, I'm always the same. You don't necessarily have to talk about that here. We're going to do what we came to do. And how that feels for the young people and how that feels for them as staff. And then talking about how they work with each other in ways that role models for the young people. How'd that do, guys?
So we're going to use words like lit and Gucci and dub, right? So, oh, they're gonna film this? We don't wanna be filmed, but. So this, first of all, I gotta say my group was Gucci down, right? Although I'm not supposed to say Gucci down because it's implied that it's just Gucci is enough, right? So the one thing that I was really impressed with was just the level of caring and trusting relationships. The fact that they do know kind of the language of young people. And we talked about really the village in each community, that it's everybody from the administrator to the case manager to the director, that they all need to make connections. And it's very critical that all of those relationships are valued. They're not our kids or your kids. They're not your kids, they're our kids, right? The other thing we talked about was continuity of services. And we have some programs that are really thinking about ladders for leadership for young people. So specifically training youth to orient new participants, that there is a space for that. And that was really lit, right? And then that this idea of high expectations, that's a challenge, that it's not about changing expectation. There's this standard of expectation, but that realizing you have to draw from other factors to make sure that that happens. So high expectations coupled with caring and trusting relationships will get a young person to be there at 8:30 in the morning when they're struggling. And then in terms of engaging activities, that was an area where people were saying, you know what, we have to constantly change our curriculum. As our participants change, we have to also change. So this idea of bringing in new content and the challenge of that, right? So they want to be responsive in real time, but they also have to train their staff and saying, okay, we want to do gender-based work, but we make sure that our staff is prepared for that. We just can't do it on the fly on Monday. And then the other piece was around opportunities to contribute, that there needs to be some infrastructure for that to happen, and so that there are community meetings that are in place, but also that when you have young people there, the biggest challenge is once they tell you something, you actually have to do something about it. So that was dub. When it doesn't happen, they say, that's dub, I'm not coming back. How am I doing with the language, right? Do I got the right swag, right?
The few things that they thought they did well is establishing caring and trusting relationships, and not only leaving those relationships to kind of individuals, but how do you then take those skills and make them something that everyone has the capacity to do. So some of the things that they talked about were some integrity around making agreements with young people. If you get a chance, talk to Christina about the difference between a handshake and a high five in her program, and what that means in terms of what young people are agreeing to when they make agreements. Transparency in your communication and honesty and integrity in your communication is something that they do to build caring and trusting relationships. Opportunities for contributions, being willing to make changes to the program based on their feedback and input. We're not going to just have you complain about it and go, wow, yeah, could you keep doing it? No, we're going to make some changes based on that. But we also talked about some of the difficulties with promoting the factors, namely around managing high expectations, and really an issue of discernment. What's our expectations versus their expectations? What's our expectations versus what's a funder expectation? And how do we integrate all of those in a way that's authentic for young people? And then also cultivating high expectations, that sometimes it's not just about saying you should go to college, but about cultivating a curiosity about it and cultivating a sense of higher expectations for themselves. Let's see, we also said that all of these things are interconnected, and that if you have a caring and trusting relationship, it can be undermined by a lack of continuity, and that you can have opportunities to contribute, but if your expectations are not consistent, then that may fall off as well. Did I get most of that, folks? All righty. Gucci?
We zeroed in really quickly on alumni. And how does this work with the alumni, kind of young people that we're working with, right? So there were some really great ideas in terms of how to maintain engagement and how to kind of create opportunities for contribution among alumni. We talked about some ideas of junior site supervisors, community engagement specialists, maybe teaching assistants. So really pushing ourselves to think about what are leadership opportunities for our alumni so that there isn't this sort of drop off. Okay, you finished the first phase, but now what? And so they really kind of pushed each other to think about how to do that. And one of the things that came up was it's not enough to say, I believe in you, you're a leader, off you go, take the young people at the site, right? We talked about some nightmares with that, but really that there was some real work that's happening to teach young people how to be leaders, to support them. We talked about kind of modeling leadership, doing with young people what you want to do, and then giving them the opportunity to kind of take it on their own. The other thing that we talked about was kind of really focusing on transitions, the importance of beginnings. What we say in the beginning really matters, but that it's never too late to kind of revisit norms, to kind of revisit expectations. It's never too late to do another orientation if your group really needs it.